She's a singer, a songwriter, evangelist, prayer warrior, author, playwright, record producer, preacher's kid, budding musician, and a friend to all she meets. Perfect Peace Ministries presents Evangelist Shannon Louise Carter!
Good morning, radio listening audience. Thank you so much for joining us once again here at the radio broadcast for the Ephesus Ministries, where we are touching lives with the love of Christ.
Good morning. Welcome back. Thank you once again so much for joining us. This is Elder Shannon Carter from the Ephesus Ministries, where we are touching lives with the love of Christ. I have with me once again our pastor. He doesn't like it when I give him all the other titles, so I'm going to just say our pastor and my daddy just so I can pick with him a little bit. But I have with me again Pastor Jeff E. Carter Jr. We've been having such a good time talking and just been ministering to each other that I'm excited to share with you what we have been sharing with each other. So once again, Dad, thank you so much for being with me again this week.
Thank you.
So we're just going to have fun and be us. Sometimes we get real, deep in stuff when we're in church, but people don't know. People see my dad, and he and I were talking about this. People see him sometimes in church, or they see him out and they think he's so staunch and so serious. And sometimes he is, and he knows how to be professional. But for those that have not seen this other side of him, he really is hilarious. He just likes to sometimes, stay in his professional mode. So we'll see if we can get him to giggle a little bit. But Dad, one of the things that you and I have been talking about, we have been partnering with Sister Kelly Showard and some other people, and they have been sponsoring something using our fellowship hall, but Ephesus is also a partner. And we do something called Color Me. Is it Color Me Crazy?
The Color of Crazy.
The Color of Crazy. And it has been phenomenal. And I only say that from what I hear from other people saying, because unfortunately, due to my work schedule, I can't be there. But my dad shares with me regularly one of the things that they talk about. They've talked about depression. They've talked about grief. And one of the things that they just talked about was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, normally you would think, well, how can you put that and ministry together? How do you put that in framework of the church? Well, that's one of the things we're going to talk about today, because one of the things that we say every week on this broadcast is we really firmly believe in reaching outside of the church walls, but even within the church walls, and touching lives with the love of Christ. Let's get to the root of problems that people are really facing and dealing with. So, Dad, talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you brought away from that session.
It's a phenomenal session. I think that the term PSTD, post-traumatic stress disorder, has been associated with veterans and soldiers who have been in war and who suffer the ill effects of that war. When in reality, most of us, I dare say if not all of us, have sometime had a traumatic event or a traumatic occurrence that has occurred in our lives that have left some things behind. And when I sit in that session, I began to recognize, oh my God, these are the things that we are dealing with people in life. As a matter of fact, I said to you, as a matter of fact, I started saying, oh God, that's me. Because all of us have had traumatic things that have happened in our lives, whether that is the death of loved ones, sicknesses that we have had to deal with in our own selves, or sicknesses in someone close to us. Sometimes they are things that have happened in our job situation or our financial situation. But what are those traumatic things that have left some things behind? This particular session was so revealing in pointing out how to recognize what's going on in our own lives as a result of stress. Not only recognizing it, but giving us some really good tips on how to deal with it. I think for me, one of the greatest things that really sort of jumped out at me, because it relates to church, and that's who I am. How do you deal with people in church? Was when the clinician talked about one of the factors that you can see in people who is dealing with this disorder is a loss of faith. That jumped out at me. And I recognized that there are a lot of people in church who are there, who are in church, but who really have lost their faith. What's amazing is that in all of these sessions that we have been dealing with Kelly, one of the reasons I am being really involved not only in these sessions is that I recognize that the church does not deal effectively with mental illness. And that's unfortunate, because the truth of the fact is the church ought to be the leading advocate for dealing with issues of mental illness, because people with mental illness come to church. They come to church for two reasons, because like everybody else, we come to church because we recognize that's where we find God. But very often people who are suffering come to church because they're looking for two things. They're looking for a safe place. And then secondly, they are looking for a place of healing. And I don't think we really are doing justice to those people. Sometimes I have said to you all, I have said to my own kids, there's a possibility I'm crazy and just don't know it. So y'all please tell me if y'all see me and know I'm crazy and I don't know it, go ahead and tell me. And of course, everybody tells me, no, Dad, you're not crazy. But I think that a lot of times, even people who don't recognize the mental illness that they are dealing with, part of that is because we have stigmatized and stereotyped this whole mental illness thing. And we need to begin taking away those layers of stigma. We need to be able to stop stereotyping that, because we have a mind. I do know some people that I kind of wonder about whether it's still there or not, but we have a mind. Just like we have a body, it exists. It's real. And just like our bodies can get sick, our bodies can get ill, our minds can have some illness. I live in the day and the time now where, quite frankly, people will call me and say, Pastor, I'm not coming to church today because when I woke up this morning, I coughed. And I think I need to stay home. And by the afternoon, the cough is gone, so they go to the mall. And in the morning, they didn't come to church because their body was a little bit sick. Just as we recognize and deal with those even minor illnesses of the body, now we've got to start dealing with those minor illnesses of the mind. It does not mean that you are crazy. And I use that word crazy because it's a lay term. It's not a good term, but it does not mean that you are crazy. It merely means that something is going on that needs to be dealt with. Let me use that same analogy that I just talked about. If you wake up with a cough, you don't necessarily need to stay home. You don't necessarily need to do a lot to deal with it, but you recognize there is a little something going on with your body. A cough signals that there is something that is just a little bit off. If the cough goes away, you're not sick. But if weeks and weeks and weeks that cough still is going on, it signals that there is something that needs to be looked at, that's something that needs to be dealt with. And sometimes it's a symptom of something slight. And sometimes it could be more. We don't know. The same thing with the mind. If there is an ache, if there is a little pain, I'll give you another example. I had been having a little bit of pain in a left spot in my chest, and it kept bothering me, it kept bothering me, and it kept bothering me. And I didn't even tell my children. This is the first time my daughter Shannon has heard it. January 1st of this year, I kept saying, you know what? This pain in my chest, I wonder if it's my heart. I wonder if I don't deal with this, am I going to have a heart attack? And so I decided I'm going to start this year right. And so January 1st, I got up out of my bed and I went to urgent care. And I took my hand and put it on the spot and said, I've been having a little pain here. It's not an acute pain. It's not a serious pain. I just recognize that it's there and I want to start checking it. And so I had the x-rays, I had the test, and they said, we see absolutely nothing. And so we can tell you that it is not in your lungs. Your lungs are clear. And I recognize that little pain is still there. So naturally, I went, saw a cardiologist, had my heart checked. The cardiologist said, the pain has nothing to do with your heart. Your heart is okay. I still said, it's not in my lungs, it's not in my heart, but I know there's a little pain there. And so I went to see the orthopedic doctor. They did x-rays, and the orthopedic doctor said there's a small degeneration in some of the bones in your left shoulder. And that little pain is radiating down into your chest. And there's a real simple fix. We'll send you to physical therapy. And when I went to the physical therapy, in about 3 weeks, the pain was gone. I recognize that the same thing can happen with our mind. This, fortunately, was just a little degeneration over time. Sometimes there's a tear. Sometimes we have made a wrong move and have done something, but it can be dealt with. In this case, the physical therapy strengthened the muscles around it and it helped. What about those little tears in our minds? What about some of the trauma that we might have suffered a long time ago that has caused something there, and there's a little pain there and we don't even know it? And we want to say, I am not crazy. I refuse to even allow anybody to check and think that I'm crazy, when sometimes there's a disorder there, there's a pain there that can be healed if we check it out. To me, that's so simple. But I think the church has got to start dealing with that. I know, and I honestly teach it at Ephesus, and I hope they continue to get it. One of the things that Ephesus hopefully will recognize by now, I continue going back to one of the most powerful scriptures in the Bible. That's the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 16, verse 15, when Jesus said, go and preach the gospel to all the world. That word gospel merely means the good news. Preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned. And here are the signs that are going to follow those who believe. Jesus says when you have that relationship of belief with the Holy Spirit, when you understand the purpose of Jesus and what God does here on earth and how God loves his people, and he empowers them to serve purpose for who he is. Here's one of the signs. He said, you shall lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. The church too often has thought that has meant you tell people, you get in line, you put them in a line, and if it's a good meeting, that line might stretch from the altar to the back door. You put them in line, you call them up, you lay hands on their head, you shake them a little bit, you tell them they're healed. And unfortunately, one thing that I hate, the church has gotten out to saying, okay, you do understand that when we put you in this line, you need to get a little offering. I think that's terrible. I so wish the church would stop doing that. But I think if it was only laying hands on people, I would say to Ephesus on Sunday mornings, let's just dismiss church after we have prayed. We're going to go across the street and we're going to start going from room to room, laying hands on people. We're going to heal them. And when the doctor comes to make rounds on Monday mornings, they all are going to be healed and they all can go home. But it's bigger than that in terms of what.
We're going to continue this next week because I'm loving what my dad is saying. Join us next week, 10:45 a.m. right here, Totally Gospel Radio Network.